It is the Ghosted Podcast, and I'm excited. We've been recording a ton of episodes lately. Obviously, if you're listening, you don't know that because we still release them every week. But it has been so fun to have some really great guests. We're recording kind of during the holiday time, so I know everyone might be in a very different place right now. I know personally, this is kind of the first thing I've done that's work related today because I've just been hanging out. Can't complain. So this is a great way to start my day at 4 p.m. So thank you, Jessica, for being here with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I want to make sure I give you a proper introduction, which I will do in 1 minute, but I want to just kind of give people the topic we're going to discuss today. There's a new dating term that I think it's from Bumble. We should give them some credits from their 2023 annual report, which I don't know how they already have an annual report for next year because it hasn't happened, but that's how they're naming it. And it's a term called guardrailing, and it describes those who are setting boundaries and protecting their energy while dating. So there's your little tease for what Jessica and I are going to talk about. And the reason the two of us are talking about this is because Jessica Rink is the founder and CEO of New Earth Coaching. She brings intuition coaching and energy work into personal, I can't speak today, but it's okay, and professional development coaching, and loves guiding business leaders to their highest path and most optimized mindsets. Sounds pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Pretty fun.
So we want to get to kind of protecting your energy, talking about energy in dating. But first of all, give us a little background on what brought you into this space. Because I know when you were describing it to me, we met in person. Yeah. It was a very interesting story.
Yeah, energy taught me, but I think I didn't know what it was for my entire life. It was just such an interesting journey professionally that I'm the type of person that's all or nothing, 100% in, 100% of the time. And that iterated throughout my entire career of such very high stress jobs, lots of crisis management, lots of being thrown into leadership positions and things kind of blow up and it's like, all right, now what? So I burned out of a lot of different jobs and a lot of different careers. And I would burn out of a lot of different relationships too, all because I was this person that was just constantly throwing 100% of myself in all the time. And that wasn't very sustainable. So in 2019, as with a lot of people, I had my big wake up moment and thought oh my gosh, I am the problem. I keep doing this to myself. And once that recognition came in, I started maybe guardrailing, if we're going to use the new terminology.
Let's use it. Why not?
I love it. Guardrailing my own experience and thought okay, I'm in a job that is not serving my energy. It's requiring more than I am willing to give. And because I'm in this people-pleasing kind of mentality, I keep throwing more and more at it, trying to fix it, and it's just getting worse and falling apart in my hands. And so I put up boundaries around the job, and I actually resigned from that job. And then I looked at all of my relationships and was like, all right, which relationships are really costing me my peace right now? And so rather than, I think a lot of people tend to get a little aggressive with this approach, like, bye, F you, I got to get out of here. You're the problem or whatever. I just kind of slowly just started managing my contact and just bringing things back and stopped putting so much of myself into everything in the relationships. And then it looked at my personal time. How am I spending my time? Well, I had this habit of constantly driving myself into really high maintenance activities, high maintenance hobbies. And so I started pulling that back a little bit. And then all of a sudden I had all this energy that I had never had before because I wasn't leaking it all over the place. That's when my intuition showed up in a really big way. I feel like I've always been really, really intuitive, but there was so much noise surrounding everything else that I was doing to try and keep all these plates spinning in the air and taking care of everybody else's needs before my own, that when all this energy was returned to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can see things now. Lots of things. Oh my gosh, I can feel things now. And then it just exploded from there. I discovered an ability to be able to teach people how to do the same thing for their lives. And it follows very much kind of the same process of guardrailing, figuring out where those boundaries need to be set. And then once that happens, energy returns, and it usually returns with some amazing gifts. And so that's been so much fun to do as a career. And it's been pretty popular, and I love bringing this information to the business community because I think I think it could do a lot of good there.
Right. And I mean, this all obviously relates to business, to dating. I
Mm-hmm.
think, life is all one thing and we got a lot of things going on in it. But I wanted to ask you more about, this whole concept of, you're giving everything 100%. I think a lot of people are praised for that, where you're like, okay, I'm giving work 100%. I'm going on
Mm-hmm.
dates every week. I'm,
Mm-hmm.
doing this with my family, and I have a dog and I walk them 3 times a day.
Yeah.
Do you run into that a lot with people you work with? And
Oh,
how do you
yeah.
talk people through that? Let's give
Yeah.
everything 100%.
That's it. We're a very performance-based society.
Hmm.
And we've put such a high value on productivity and efficiency and driving energy and really forcing things to happen. And it's a very, it can be pretty aggressive to say that we're giving 100% of our energy and 100% of our effort 100% of the time. That is a recipe for burnout.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's just not feasible. And you see it show up in some pretty interesting areas within our society. Like, why are middle schoolers burning out? Why
Oh,
are
my
elementary
God.
school kids burning out and having like panic attacks in school? And like, what kind of values are we reinforcing with this constant hypervigilance of productivity 100% of the time? I just don't think it's very sustainable.
Right. I mean, I think this is why, like, so many people are realizing, whoa, I am burnt out, or burnout is a
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
I feel like that was one gift of the past couple of years of being able to work at home and saying, oh, it is nice to take like a, longer lunch and go on a walk in
Yeah.
the middle of the day because I
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting too, because I see a lot of burnout happen with dating,
Hmm.
because people feel like they need to give it 100%. Do you ever kind of work with people in that regard, or is it more just you're
Oh, yeah.
focusing on the business side?
Oh, yeah. Well, what's so interesting is that I think while my headline and focus is on business, relationships cover at least 40% of something,
Yeah.
because if the energy at home is not balanced, then you're going to approach other areas of your life from an imbalanced state as well. And we're talking about foundational energy, and foundational energy starts at home.
Hmm.
And if there's a lot of pressure to perform or pressure to succeed at home, I mean, we're starting our day a little bit on deficit, and that can be a little bit problematic. So when talking to a lot of executives and entrepreneurs and small business owners about their energy, where represents some imbalance? Where is the imbalance showing up? And relationships can be pretty significant.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would think that it would be tough for you to just work with someone and talk about their job,
Yeah.
rather than, all the
Mm-hmm.
relationships that are involved in it. And when you
Yeah.
say foundational energy, what
Mm-hmm.
do you mean by that, by the way?
So it comes from kind of a perspective of, you've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that's that bottom row is the need for shelter, food, safety, and I think sex is in there. And it's that sense of belonging, that sense that everything here, your basic human needs, have been met. You'd be surprised how many people, in a very wealthy society, we don't have that foundational level completely met. There's something that our brain and our subconscious mind still perceives as a lack of safety. And what I see quite often in relationships is that, look, we are a traumatized society. Like, we've been through some ish together as a people, and no matter
Too
what
much.
corner
Yeah.
yeah, you've come from. A lot of people I've noticed don't have foundational safety when it comes to relationships. And this sucks, but it's something that we need to look at as a society. I think, when you've got all this explosion on social media talking about like what does controlling behavior look like in a relationship? What does manipulation look like in a relationship? What's a narcissist? What's gaslighting? With all of these terminologies that we're starting to learn about, what we're really trying to do is create safety within our relationships. And so many of us are at a disadvantage because we haven't really learned what that is. It's not been modeled to us quite yet. So I love that we've got this tidal wave of movement to try and say, all right, look at the behaviors and the toxicities that we've inherited that have been imprinted on us through our upbringing. And it's very generational too. So like, look, blame shifting is not going to be very useful in this. And I think it's a great opportunity to show up and be like, all right, where might I be carrying that energy into certain relationships? How can I become a safe place? And once we do that, that foundational aspect becomes safety at home. And when you feel safe at home, then you can go confidently out into your workplace, confidently out into the world, walking down the street and be like, you know what, I got it going on, because I know that when I return home, I can rest, I can recover, I can fully be myself, I can fall apart if I need to, and everything will be fine.
Right. And I can imagine too, kind of back to this whole guard railing term, if you're not guard railing your foundational energy, or, prioritizing that before you get into a relationship, I mean, what a mess you're going to be when you try to meet someone. Like, what might that show up as if you're, out there dating, but you don't even have this foundational energy all set up?
Yep. And that foundation starts within, and it starts within for ourselves. I think so many of us through relationships try to create that foundational energy with somebody else, and then be like, all right, you have to be my safety system. That's great. That's
right.
Wonderful.
Good plan for a moment.
But I think, creating a safe space for ourselves, a sacred space at home, is critical. So I love the direction that we're moving as a society, and I see lots of positive marks.
Right. And even new dating terms I like, This one isn't really even a bad one. I know we were joking. There was another one that is a new one a friend just sent me the other day called winter coating, like, the jacket you'd put on. And that's where, you get back together with an ex, or an ex reaches out over the holidays to keep you warm, I guess, or whatever you want to do with that ex. So we don't love all of these.
That's it. Because baby, it's cold outside, right?
It is. So, winter is upon us. I wonder if winter coating happens, in California where it's not so cold. But at least everywhere, I think everywhere exes are still reaching out.
I love it.
And then I know another thing that, I wanted to bring up with you was kind of about past experiences and relationships. It's a lot of what I try to do with people too, of like, hey, if you're not over an ex, obviously you can't be with someone new. Or even dealing with past traumas, or, it's hard to be in partnership with someone else. So, where do you start with people when you're like, okay, there's something from the past that's unresolved? And then I have a second part to this question of, do you think most people have something from the past they haven't addressed?
Oh, 100%. Yes. So the basis of how I work is intuitively I can sense in people's subconscious where certain anchor energies are stored. And anchor energies tend to be really big emotions that are tied to memories and experiences that are still running in the background. So picture a computer, you've got a bunch of windows open, 32 windows in the background, one of them's playing music, you have no idea which one. That's the one that's draining your energy, it's draining your focus, and it's creating some unconscious behaviors. And largely these unconscious behaviors are not exactly ideal. So what I do is help intuitively dip into that person's subconscious mind and feel around safely through just looking for what anchor emotions are storing certain experiences in order to close those windows, to close those applications. Generally, it's anger, bitterness, resentment, sadness, grief, really, really heavy emotions. And then we kind of look at the memory that surrounds that. Once the emotional component of that is healed, then the memory closes up, and now it's a scar, not an open wound that's accidentally bleeding all over every single relationship that we've got. So yes, I think everybody would benefit from dealing with their past experiences. And God, we get so wounded in our relationships. Like, that is really the basis. I think that's where most of our trauma comes from, is from other people and from areas where we wanted to feel safe, and maybe somebody couldn't hold us in that safety. Missed expectations, all kinds of different aspects that just make it a little bit harder for us to trust the next one, and make it a little bit harder for us to love fully with an open heart the next one. And so we're just piling on trauma after trauma after trauma until, like, we go into these relationships completely closed up, being like, love me, but I don't love me. but I don't know how to open up. And it's hard. The good news is we get our most amount of healing from our relationships as well.
Right. So there's also the upside when you're ready to kind of, let your walls down. And that's what you were saying kind of made me think of, people who do have some walls up in dating. And, really most of the people who come to me, they're probably in that place because they are like, okay, I've done the dating apps. I've met these people. Maybe they're thinking in their head, oh my God, how am I ever going to find someone?
Yeah.
So they already go in with the guardrails fully up. They've become walls. I'm not going to let go of this guardrail thing all episodes. So just
I love it.
Warning.
I love it.
And maybe they're overprotecting their energy almost in a way.
Absolutely. Especially I think as the older we get more and more instances of this situation turned out like this. It's likely to happen again. Getting people to change their mindsets around relationships and dating is incredibly difficult because we've had so much evidence up until this point. But what's so interesting about this evidence is that it's driven by our belief system. So if you believe that people can't be trusted, you're going to attract situations and people who can't be trusted because it reinforces your belief that people can't be trusted. And so it's just a cyclical thing.
Right.
And so if we've got any of that in our dating, like, what is it? Men are pigs, or whatever that narrative is. Like, I can't trust the dude.
Insert thing here.
Yeah. Or women are crazy. Whatever, pick one. We've all been taught or imprinted some kind of narrative, and we keep reinforcing that story. And then we go into dating, and guess what? We get a bunch of people, and dating apps only make it worse, by the way, right? Like now we've got more people that fit that profile that we've got in our head. So it's so interesting until we stop that mode of thinking, until we stop that narrative and really crush that storyline, we're going to keep repeating the same experiences. And that's where I see people give up on dating, and they give up on love, and they give up on, I'm just never going to get this right because everybody out there sucks. And I would go, well, let's look at your programs. Let's look at what belief systems you've got.
Yeah, I love that analogy you have, by the way. I want to give you just another shout out to having that idea of like the window that's in the background that's open, because I am someone with 1,000 tabs, so that's just like so relevant to me.
I understand. I grew up in Silicon Valley, so the computer metaphors are pretty fun for me.
I like it. I mean, that is like the perfect way to describe it to someone who's unfamiliar to all of this. And something else that just came to mind too is like, think about how powerful we are to like bring people into our lives. If we can bring crappy people in that confirm, all of our negativity. So just like reminder of how many positive, amazing people could you bring in if you just shifted that. So 100%. Easy, right?
It is. It can be. And it can be with a commitment to changing our story and changing the narratives that we have in our heads. That self-fulfilling prophecy thing. Where did I read a quote today? It was Jen Sincero, and she said, like, your life is entirely make-believe. Whatever you believe, you're going to make. I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. Like, that's the vibe. Whatever you want to make up, you will get.
I feel like everyone should be required to read at least one of her books. She is awesome.
Absolutely. She really is.
Yeah, I mean, there is so much power in that. I know we've talked about this on the podcast before of like, you should visualize, manifest your person, bring them into your life. People are like, Abby, stop talking about it. But, I will once all of you listeners have manifested this person.
I did, by the way. Exactly that.
I was going to ask you about that. Please share.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible, actually. I had been single for a little bit and was really happy in it. Just like completely feeling really good, feeling like I was healing a lot of things and just very settled in my own being. That foundational energy was really working strong for me. And then the longer parts of the winter started setting in. And there's something about winter and that like, oh gosh, I'm feeling a little lonely. Wouldn't it be nice to have somebody around? So this intense feeling of loneliness set in, and it was very weird because I'm not normally somebody who feels that way. And then it's a little embarrassing, but we're all friends here, so I'm just going to go for it.
We are. It's a safe space.
So I started just kind of like my intuition started thinking about the facets and tenets of manifestation. And I thought like, all right, well, what about manifesting a partner? I have my list of the qualities that I'd like him to have, and that's all well and good. And my intuition just kind of asked me one day, well, what does he look like? And I'm like, oh, how interesting. I don't know. So I started thinking about it, and I'm like a movie and nerd junkie. And so I was watching Game of Thrones, and I was like, kind of looks like that guy. That guy's pretty good looking. And so it was Pedro Pascal in Game of Thrones, who I just think is pretty attractive, very attractive.
I feel like most of us could agree on that one for sure.
Yeah, good looking dude. So I started like watching everything that he was in, and I'm going like, is this healthy? Like, what's going on? Like, I've got a crush on an actor. Okay, like, all right, we'll dip into my inner fangirl, and this is fine. So then I'm kind of moving along my day, and I even reached out to my girlfriend at the time, and I said, you know, I think there's something wrong with me. Like, I can't stop thinking about this actor. And I don't know what's going on with my brain. She goes, girl, you're calling something in. Just roll with it. I'm like, all right.
Okay.
A little while later, my intuition says, you're joining a dating app today. And I went, no, I'm not. Intuition? No, I'm not going to do that. Nope. Not even close. Did it anyways, followed my gut instinct and intuition, was on the app for like 3 days, swipe, swipe, swipe. And I'll be damned if I didn't find somebody who looked almost identical to that actor. Way better looking, in my opinion.
Oh,
he'll probably listen to this podcast later. But yeah, no, he is. And we ended up talking that day. We ended up on the phone within 20 minutes of swiping right with each other. We met each other the next day. Very random story. Our first date was helping two perfect strangers move into their apartment, which I'm like, that's cool. Like, way to pay that forward, a first date story.
Kind of shows at least that you both value similar things, you know?
Absolutely. Hearts of service for sure. And we've been together ever since. And so it was just this random story of like the universe, I think, already knew what the pairing was going to look like, already knew who that person was, but had to catch me up to it because I'm sitting here like, like I'm just going to be single for the rest of my life because I've totally given up on dating because dating sucks. And that was my narrative. But the universe proved me otherwise, which was super cool. And I'm just very grateful that situation happened. And I think it speaks to one of the tenets about manifestation. I think people work really, really hard to like grind on their manifestation. Like, I have to have this thing. And there's almost this kind of death grip on it. I got to manifest this thing. What if the universe has already created it for you? And you're just being caught aware and caught up to your own manifestation? Would it require all of this death grip energy over it? Or can we relax a little bit, being like, that's what I want? Well, it must be coming in.
Right. Such a good way to put it. Because it's like, you know, like our person that's giving 100% to everything, they may also give 100% to manifesting. And they get burnt out on that.
I see it so many times. People come in, they're like, what is wrong with me? I'm doing everything right. I'm saying my affirmations, I'm vision boarding, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I just go, maybe you're attempting to manifest something that's not in your highest alignment. So in that case, it's the universe showing you kind of a mercy of maybe there's something better. And that thing that you're trying and death gripping to get for yourself may not be exactly what you need at this time.
Right. It's such a good point. And there's another part of your story I think that's important to point out. There was a moment where you really trusted your intuition, even when logically you were kind of like, no, I don't want to do that. What was that moment like?
It was a 3-day battle. Like, I remember arguing with the voice in my head for 3 days, saying like, I'm not going to do that because I've had such horrible experiences every single time that I've done that. And so again, that narrative was really strong, and the loop was just going round and around and around, reinforcing the belief that I couldn't trust a dating app, that it was going to be a horrible experience. And because the universe had something else in mind and was telling me through my intuition, that's like the narrative shifted and changed. And it's been the best thing I've ever done for myself by following that. So thanks for pointing that out.
Right. I mean, I think it is so interesting because a lot of what I do in matchmaking is trusting my intuition.
I bet.
And yes, I want to see on paper, is this person in this person's age range? Are
Hmm.
they the right gender? Are they the right religion for one another? All of the things on paper. But a lot of it is like, I really just think Joe Schmo needs to meet Sally Schmo, and there they go,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I guess I always wonder this because I can't describe it, but since this is what you do for work, I think you probably will be able to. What does it actually mean to be more in tune with your intuition? Because I can't
Yeah.
tell you I did like step one, two, three, and here I was.
I love that. And you hit the nail right on the head in saying that on paper, this should work. And that's so much of what we do. It's our intellect.
Yeah.
On paper, we're going to follow this because check the box, check the box, check the box. And that's driven by intellect and our mind.
Mm-hmm.
Mind is very, very useful, but it is limited because it only is based on the things that it knows, can define, and already happened before. It builds on its own experience.
Right.
Intuition is all about energy, feeling, sensing, the unknowable, the uncertain, things that aren't written yet. And so it's very important to develop a relationship with that side of your voice. And people go, intuition is your sixth sense. I would argue it's your first, because think about where its first uses were for us. We're traveling through, the prairie lands as a hunter and gatherer, and our gut instinct goes, that bush over there, there's something going on.
Mm-hmm.
And our instinct or our intuition, oh, look, there's a saber-toothed tiger behind there, right? So that was our first sense, our survival sense. But somewhere, because in our Western society, we favored mind over all, we've cut off our ability to listen to that voice.
Right. We're almost taught, like don't listen to it, don't trust it. It's all got to be just whatever has happened logically in your brain. And
Yeah.
then we sit in front of a computer all day and do whatever analytical typing, thinking that we do all day. So there's very few people that are tapping into that actually in their day to day.
That's absolutely right. And I would argue that some of the best business leaders and best entrepreneurs that we've ever seen have largely been guided by their intuition. Albert Einstein talks about it. Steve Jobs talks about it. There's all these like big time names of people who followed their intuition and their gut instinct, and they rely on it very heavily. I think the same can be applied to absolutely every area of our life, and it should be. When you trust your instincts in terms of relationships, I don't know, I think really, really wonderful things can happen, because how often do we discredit people based on what it looks like on paper?
All the time. I see it multiple times a day.
I bet.
I'll say, hey, this person is this, this, and this. I'd love for you to meet them. No, I don't think so.
Right. And I think that's where dating apps can be kind of limited too.
Of course. Yeah. I wonder if, I think there could be a level of trusting your gut, trusting your intuition on a dating app. But it's also hard not to judge if you're like, ooh, this picture is horrible. But maybe my intuition is like, I still kind of want to meet them.
Yep.
It's hard to be torn between those two things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting dance, that's for sure.
Yeah. Dating apps have done weird things to us people.
So true. It's so true.
But hey, if they work for you, then keep doing it. If they don't, reach out to me. Always got to have my shameless plug on the show. So.
Absolutely. And I think they should, because for a business leader that is following their intuition, I find that they tend to make really wise and better decisions, because it's a complete whole person, whole decision making. They rely on intellect, and intuition really makes for a balanced individual. So well done.
Right. Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I could only imagine, we actually know what it's like when an algorithm takes over your dating life, and then that's a dating app, and
yep.
you got to go on 100 dates to find one good person.
So true.
So we don't want to rely entirely on science. If there was a secret formula to dating, I'd be a billionaire. So if I ever find it, I'll definitely clue everyone in on that one.
I love it.
Because that would be amazing if it was just like,
it.
Okay, you two go together because A plus B equals C. Yep. I would love that personally. Make my life easier.
That's awesome.
And Jessica, I wanted to make sure we have some time too for you to talk about how you work with people, how people can contact you if they are feeling like what you've been talking about is something they want more of.
Yeah, thank you. NewEarthCoaching.com. I approach it from two different perspectives. You can approach intuitive coaching from a personal, you want to look at your life where you might be feeling stuck. Improvement on relationships across the board doesn't have to be just dating, but maybe you want to mend your relationship with your family or your parents, and there's some energy that's blocking that. Also on the other end, I work with business professionals and executives when, again, like I said, when we lock into our intuition, we tend to become powerhouses in every area of our life, not especially business. And I just feel like the intuitive leader can be such a force for change and such a force for good, no matter where they're at and what they're doing. So that's my passion and my vision. I also work with healers of all kinds, psychics and mediums and Reiki professionals and therapists and whoever's in the healing profession to level up their game, no matter what their game is, and aligning energy that way. And it's really fun to work in those realms as well. So I think the long and short of it would be for those that are seeking to connect with their intuition, to strengthen their intuition, or to learn what their gut instincts are. I notice that women tend to connect with intuition sense. Men tend to connect with gut instinct sense. We're really talking about the same thing, but from two different perspectives. We're also talking about energy optimization, brain optimization, and achieving flow state. So there's lots of different angles for this kind of work, but the point of all of it is to connect with that inner wisdom and alignment from within so that we have the foundational energy within ourselves and become virtually unstoppable in every single area of our life.
Well, I don't know who wouldn't want to reach out to you after hearing that. I'm like, we need part 2 with Jessica.
Fun. I love it.
I wanted another question came up that I just have to ask you now too.
Yeah.
There is a lot of talk in at least circles that I'm in about flow state. And I feel like people have heard this buzzword before. Do you feel like you could get into a flow state with dating? Is that possible?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Want to give the people some hope.
In terms of flow state, I describe it as the most optimized experience possible, where here's the trick. You're not thinking, you're experiencing. So think about the last date that you went on where you're trying somebody out. How much of that experience was dominated by your thoughts and how much of that experience was dominated by your narrative? You walked away from that. He was cool, but da-da-da-da-da-da. And in that narrative, in the moment, we're really not present with that person at all.
Right.
We're present with the story that we have of that person. So flow state in dating would essentially be you drop the narrative and you're experiencing that person as reality is creating it. And it largely becomes an energetic process, and it becomes a very honest process where there's not as much awkwardness as I think there would be when our intellect and our mind gets involved. And I find that flow state in dating would open the door to a lot more respect, a lot more heart-driven conversations, even if that conversation is, hey, you're wonderful. I had so much time sitting here with you today and learning about you. I don't think we're going to be a good match going forward in a relationship perspective, but I wish you well on your journey, rather than getting ghosted or getting blasted or getting, a suboptimal experience.
Yeah, right. We can throw in all the other dating terms. Cloaking, breadcrumbing, zombieing. I don't know. Go back to one of the early episodes. We did a whole thing about it.
Oh my God. What is zombieing?
Okay, zombieing is when you ghost someone, but then you later on come back from the dead and say, hey, what's going on?
Hey, I dropped my phone for 3 weeks. You just got a new one, I guess.
Right?
Back from the
I
dead.
feel like
that is brilliant.
The classic zombie is the you up text after you've ghosted someone and then you send it at 3 a.m.
I got to tell you, I'm very grateful not to be in the dating scene, but I'm very, very grateful for everything that it taught me about human behavior and human nature.
Oh my gosh, exactly. Think about if you view dating like that, of hey, research, practice,
Yep.
learning about people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it'd be super interesting. Of maybe we'll tease a little part two where we could delve more into getting into your flow state and dating,
Would love
because I
that.
think that would be super cool.
Yeah.
And Jessica, any last words of wisdom before I let you go?
Oh, I just want people to remember how beautiful they are. And whatever the narrative in your head is saying about you that prevents you from seeing yourself clearly, just remember that that safety and that beauty truly is within, and it can be found.
Oh, thank you for that. I feel
You're
like
so
I needed to
welcome.
hear that today too. So I appreciate you.
You bet.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was a blast having you on. And I'm just going to text you like a daily fun dating term now so you can laugh.
Please do. I feel like I need more of this in my life. Thank you so much for having me. It
Awesome.
was an honor.